Wyoming winter had teeth that year, sharp and unforgiving. Rancher Cole Brennan made his final rounds at midnight. Checking on the livestock before the storm everyone said was coming hit hard. The full moon hung low and bright, turning the snow blue-silver, beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. He pulled open the barn door, lantern in hand, expecting nothing more than his horses settling in for the night. What he found stopped him cold. A young woman lay curled against his Palomino mare, her blonde hair spread across the horse's warm flank like spilled gold. She wore a thin dress more suited to summer than this killing cold, and her feet were bare, one leg showing an ugly wound that had bled through a makeshift bandage. She was maybe 25, her face pale as the moonlight streaming through the barn's broken slats. Cole moved closer, careful not to startle her. The mare nickered softly, and the woman's eyes fluttered open. They were green, bright with fever, unfocused and confused. She looked right at him. But Cole had the strange feeling she was seeing someone else entirely. "Elizabeth," she whispered, and Cole's heart stopped. Elizabeth, his wife's name. His late wife, gone 2 years now from pneumonia that took her before the doctor could even make it through the spring mud to their ranch. "What did you say?" Cole asked, his voice rough. But the woman's eyes had already closed again, her breathing shallow and quick. He set down the lantern and knelt beside her, pressing the back of his hand to her forehead. Burning hot. The wound on her leg looked infected, angry red streaks climbing toward her knee. She was dying, and she'd somehow stumbled into his barn and spoken his dead wife's name. Cole didn't believe in ghosts or providence or any of that nonsense, but he believed in not letting people die when he could help them. He gathered the woman carefully in his arms. She weighed almost nothing and carried her, to the house. The next hours blurred together in lamplight and worry. Cole cleaned the wound on her leg, ugly and deep, like she'd fallen on something sharp. He got willow bark tea into her for the fever, changed her into one of Elizabeth's old nightgowns, and settled her in the guest room. All the while, she drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes crying out, sometimes mumbling words he couldn't make out. But twice more, clear as a bell, she said it, "Elizabeth," by dawn. The storm had hit full force, howling around the house like something alive and angry. Cole sat beside the woman's bed, changing the cool cloth on her forehead every few minutes, watching her fight whatever battle was raging inside her fevered mind. It was mid-morning when her eyes finally opened and stayed open. They focused on him with awareness this time, and fear flickered across her face. "Easy," Cole said quietly. "You're safe. You were hurt, half frozen in my barn. I brought you inside." She looked around the room, taking in the simple furniture, the window where snow pressed against the glass. Her hand went to her leg, feeling the clean bandages there. "How long?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Since midnight. It's morning now. Storms got us locked in good." She closed her eyes, and a tear slid down her temple into her hair. "I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go. I just kept walking until I couldn't anymore. What's your name?" "Sarah. Sarah Mitchell." She opened her eyes again, meeting his gaze. "You're Cole Brennan." It wasn't a question. Cole felt that strange chill again, the one he'd felt in the barn. "How do you know my name?" Sarah's face crumpled with grief. "Because Elizabeth was my cousin, my only family, and I came here to find her, but the people in town told me she died. They told me she died 2 years ago, and I was too late." The words hung in the cold air like smoke. Cole sat back, trying to process what she'd just said. Elizabeth never mentioned a cousin. "We lost touch when I married and moved to California. My husband seemed good at first, but he changed after the wedding. Got mean, got violent." Her hand unconsciously went to her leg. 3 days ago, he came home drunk and pushed me down the stairs. I knew if I stayed, the next time he'd kill me. so I took what little money I'd hidden and ran. I'd gotten a letter from Elizabeth 5 years ago, telling me about this place, about you, about how happy she was. I remembered the address. I thought if I could just get here, she'd help me. Cole's throat tightened. That sounded like Elizabeth, all right? She'd been the kind of person people ran to when they needed help. The kind who always had room at her table and warmth in her heart. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "She was a good woman. The best I ever knew. The people in town said you haven't been the same since she passed," Sarah said, softly. "They said you don't come into town anymore, don't talk to folks. They said you just work your ranch alone and let the world go by." Cole stood up, uncomfortable with how easily this stranger could see into his life. "You need rest. That infection's still fighting you. We'll talk more when you're stronger." But over the next 3 days, trapped together by the storm, they couldn't help but talk. Sarah told him about her life in San Francisco, about the man who'd courted her with poetry and flowers, and then revealed himself to be something cold and cruel, about the baby she'd lost last year, and how her husband had blamed her for it, about the loneliness of being trapped in a beautiful house that was really a prison. Cole found himself talking to, more than he had in 2 years, about how he'd met Elizabeth at a church social, how she'd laughed at his awkward attempts at dancing, about building this ranch together, about the plans they'd had for children and a life full of noise and joy, about how empty everything felt now, how he'd just been going through the motions, getting up each day because that's what you did, not because he saw much point in it. "She wouldn't want that for you," Sarah said on the 3rd evening, when the storm had finally started to ease. They sat by the fire, and her fever had broken at last, though she was still weak. "Elizabeth wouldn't want you to stop living just because she couldn't stay." "How would you know what she'd want?" Cole asked, but there was no heat in it, "'Cause I know what I'd want if I were her. I'd want the person I love to find joy again, to find purpose, to find someone else to share sunrises and Sunday dinners with." Sarah looked at him across the firelight. "I'd want them to know that love doesn't end. It just changes shape, and there's enough of it to go around." Cole stared into the flames, feeling something crack open inside his chest, something that had been frozen solid for 2 years. "Your husband," he said finally. "If he comes looking, he won't find me," Sarah interrupted. "I was careful. And besides, I didn't come all this way just to go back." "What will you do? Where will you go when you're healed?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. I hadn't thought past getting here, past finding Elizabeth." Cole met her eyes. In them, saw something he recognized. Someone trying to figure out how to start over when everything you'd known had fallen apart. Someone who'd been broken and was learning how to stand up again. "You could stay," he heard himself say. "For a while, anyway. Until you figure things out. I could use help with the ranch come spring, and this house has plenty of room." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Why would you do that?" "You don't know me." "No," Cole agreed. "But Elizabeth did. And if she was the kind of person you'd risk everything to find, that tells me something about you. Besides, maybe we both need a reason to believe the world's not all cruel husbands and lonely nights." That spring, when the snow melted and the first green showed through the brown grass, folks in town noticed that Cole Brennan was different. He smiled more. He came to church again. He brought a young woman with him, blonde with kind eyes, who limped slightly and wore Elizabeth's old dresses until he could get her some of her own. Some whispered about it, but most figured a man had a right to find his way back to living. And if a stranger helped him do it, well, that was between him and God, up at the ranch. Cole and Sarah planted a garden together where Elizabeth used to keep hers. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, learning each other's rhythms, healing in the way broken things do when they're given time and care and a safe place to mend. Cole didn't know if what was growing between them was love or just two wounded people finding shelter in each other. but he knew it felt right. Felt like maybe Elizabeth had sent her cousin to him somehow. One last gift from beyond, saying it was okay to live again. Sarah planted roses by the porch steps, the same kind Elizabeth used to grow. When they bloomed that summer, filling the air with sweetness, Cole stood beside her and took her hand. "She'd have liked you," he said quietly. Sarah squeezed his fingers. "I think she already did. I think that's why she led me here." Sometimes the people we've lost find ways to take care of us, even after they're gone. Sometimes healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means making room for something new alongside what we'll always carry. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let ourselves be found. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Drop a comment below about someone who helped you find your way when you were lost. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.